Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Is there no such thing as an Agile coach? Where do we go from there? Where do we go from here now that all our children are grown up? And how do we spend our lives if there's no one to lend us a hand? The words of Alan Parsons that I was going to play here, but I figured it'd probably be better just to speak them out. Hello, my name is Ryan Erikson, host here of Riffing with Ryan and proprietor of the soon-to-be open Purple Squirrel Cafe. If you're wondering what that is, I will be telling you soon. But today, the topic is, as I started up at the top, no such thing as an Agile coach. The big container and the secondary container is where do we go from here? And to introduce the players to step into the conversation jam, the first on my right here be Mr. Ryan Behrman. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Ryan.
Hi. Ryan, meet Ryan. So what I would like to, I'll ask you the easy question first. Who are you? What do you call yourself? And why are you here? And is there such a thing as an Agile coach?
Big questions. Who are you? What do you call yourself? And why are you here? The three big questions of life. So yeah, I was on last time as well, and I introduced myself as an Agile coach, but it's not really as accurate as I could probably have put it. So ultimately helping organizations work better. And Agile is one of those umbrella terms that is quite fitting with that. So I call myself a number of things depending on who I'm talking to. Why am I here? I enjoyed it last time, and I'm learning, and hopefully it's useful to others to have what I would call a dialogue, different opinions, but ultimately I don't tend to take very strong positions until something really sort of ignites my fire. So I don't know if that's going to happen tonight, but if we can path some sort of a way forward, where do we go from here in Agile coaching, then I'll be very glad.
Thank you, Ryan. Now, adding to the stage, playing the instrument that he wishes to play tonight for Ryan, and I don't know what time it is for Ken, probably the same as me, Ken Rickard. So Ken, who are you? You call yourself? Why are you here? And is there such a thing as an Agile coach?
Oh, wow. It's a lot of questions. So
Give the other guys
Rickard,
get the break.
It's my first time here. And so I would say that I'm a change alchemist, a strategist for business value and transformation. And probably my friends and my employers would call me an enterprise coach. But I tend to focus on leadership and transformation at the organization level. What was the other questions?
Is there such thing as an Agile coach? That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go there. I think it probably depends on who you ask. Agile to me is more of a set of capabilities or a way of getting to an outcome. I would prefer to describe it as agility. And so if there's somebody who needs to come along and help people with that, if they can't kind of figure it out on their own, or if they're not doing well with it, then why not a coach? But I do think that coaching is more broad than that. Agile kind of puts it in a very fine lane. So I'd probably say yes, and probably a little bit no.
Yes and no. Okay.
Yep.
It's fair. We'll see whether you end up on one side or the other on that.
Yeah.
Now, right. So next on the stage will be Mr. Ian McKenna. Hello, Ian. Shall we do the same questions or say, hi, I'm blah, and yes or no, there is such a thing as this mystical Agile coach?
Well, I don't call myself anything.
I'll let you go on the big screen with that.
I leave it to other people to decide what to call me. Some call me people call me lots of different things. More often than not, a pain in the ass. But that's because I try to provoke people to think differently. Is there such a thing as an agile coach? No, because there's no such thing as agile.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that'll be a little spicy to come in here. Now, next on the stage will be Dave Baskin. Hello, Dave. Also new to the channel and to the stream here. The same questions to Ian down to you. So, say a bit about yourself, who you are, what do you call yourself, and is there such a thing as an agile coach?
So I'm both an agile coach and a scrum master. Usually I'll get brought in under one, but I'll wind up doing both in various ways. I think there is such thing as an agile coach. I'm a strong believer in it. I think it's a way to help the organizations as well as to help the teams. To me, Scrum Master and Agile Coach are pretty much exactly the same things. It's just different audiences. One focuses on the organization, the other focuses on teams. But I believe if you look in the Scrum Guide, it does mention, that Scrum Masters should be coaches both to the team and the organization. So I think they're interchangeable. I enjoy agile coaching. I enjoy being a scrum master. My background previous to that was I spent a lot of time as a hands-on developer most of my career. So I was a lead developer, a lead test engineer. I have DevOps experience, automation. I've been a PM. I've worked in a PMO. So I've worked in the entire SDLC. That being said, I've also adapted Scrum in hardware, in business, in testing, in DevOps. So I'm a big believer, not just in Scrum, but the other frameworks as well. It just seems that most of the organizations, at least from what I've personally seen, it's usually Kanban or Scrum, and it's mostly Scrum.
Thank you, Dave. Last to the stage, and who knows if there will be others joining, Mr. Dan Moody. Hello, Dan. Welcome back.
Hey,
And
thanks.
to you, say a bit about the instrument that Dan plays and
I'll play
we got.
Sure, I'll play the tuba. Why not? Because that's what I played in marching band in high school, and I had the big sousaphone. And people would like to throw stuff at it. And these days they put the screens on so people can't throw stuff in it.
And they have the logo also on the sousaphone.
Yeah, and they have the logo, and it's functional because it keeps the stuff out of it. You're always a target. So I'll play the tuba or the sousaphone. That's the one that wraps around. I guess I kind of call myself an agile coach, but I say only kind of. I've been doing that for a better part of a decade, actually more than a decade at this point. And I don't know, is there such a thing as an agile coach? I think a lot of the conversation about is there such a thing as an agile coach or not, some of it to me feels like gatekeeping, in that like, oh, those people aren't what I am. So some of it feels that way to me. And others, it sounds like semantics. And I'm not sure that the people paying the bill care as much as we do about whether or not there's such a thing as an agile coach. I just come in to help I help organizations work better. And these days, my focus is on people and human systems. It's not the work that's the problem, and it's not the process that's the problem. All that stuff is fairly easy, and people could figure it out if they could just talk to one another, and they actually had honest conversations instead of politicking and gamesmanship and backstabbing and backbiting and all that stuff that goes on. If you could solve some of those issues, the work stuff is actually not all that hard. So that's where I focus, is on human systems and how people interact.
Fantastic.
So I don't know if that makes me. Does that make me an agile coach? I don't know. If that's what somebody wants to hire, great. I'm an agile coach.
Oh, okay. Well, here we are, 6 of us. I'll step off the stage in a little bit. And it's your show. gentlemen. So whether any of you feels disagreement or just you want to sing the praises of Agile coaching and just completely refute the theme, whatever you want to do, I'm here for it. I'll hang in the background if I think that I care about something that you're talking about. I'll pop in, or if one of you starts to go off the rails, we'll come in and wave a flag and say, stop that. Anything else about the jam session here today? Open space rules. Whenever it starts is the right time. Now is the right time. We are starting. Whoever is here is the right people. That's you and me on the screen, and whoever shows up in the chat. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. So if nothing happens, then well, the next rule is when it's over, and it could be over in 5 minutes, or it could be over in 50 or 70, depending on how activated you are with each other. And the one rule of this jam session, you can step off the stage with your instrument and go home. And I encourage you to do that if you are neither receiving or giving value to this forum. And with that, I'm going to drop out and let you guys speak to the passion in your hearts about whatever you want to talk about.
I forget, who is it that said that it was a hard, there's no such thing as agile?
That was me.
Where was that? All right. I want to start on that one. I want to hear more about that.
Well, agile is a noun. It's not a noun, is it? It's an adjective. And the manifesto, if you go back to that as being the initial definition, it's often misreferred to as the Agile Manifesto. Maybe because they shortened the URL, the website to that, but the actual title is the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Agile being used as an adjective to describe an approach to software development. Yeah, there can be agile ways of doing other things, but there's no.
But that sounds pedantic to me, because is there such a thing? I have here. It's a tissue, right? But most people call it Kleenex. And so over time, language evolves. So agile as a noun describes all those things under that umbrella. So that sounds pedantic to say, oh, it's an adjective.
Maybe it is pedantic, but then I have a background in software development, and bits are either on or off. There's no indeterminate state in between. And I actually think that by morphing it into a noun is actually something that's caused a lot of problems, because it's moved away from its core in software development.
That's why I think I agree that I see agile as an adjective. But when I say that, I say it in conjunction with coach. So when I hear Agile Coach, I think of a coach of Agile versus any other type of coach or a life coach or anything like that. So to me, you're coaching Agile. Now that being said, I believe that whatever, what the hiring manager is really looking for is they want their teams to run better. Yeah. Whatever that means to them, they want their teams to run better. So I try not to focus on Agile to the letter of the word. I try to work more in the spirit of Agile, usually specifically Scrum. I've really go ahead.
Here's the thing though, Dave, because I was watching one of these, I can't remember whether it was last week or the week before, and there was talk about the number of life coaches that have come into the Agile coaching space. Now, if we talked about having Agile software development coaches, do you think life coaches would have felt that they could come in and fit into that world?
Well, life coaches, so let me just spend a minute on that. So I agree with what I believe was talked about in there. And maybe this is specific to location, but when you're going to start getting into life coaching, I believe you need to be licensed for that. And you don't want to be taking that on, because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, not just with the company, but beyond that, depending on what type of advice you give and what happens with that individual that you're giving that advice to. I don't believe that's why we're there. If they need advice like that, my advice would be, please speak with HR. That's their job.
Wait, so hold on. There is no advice giving in coaching in true, like in that form of, in that stance. There is no advice giving, but I take issue with this whole, there's all these life coaches in Agile. I hear it. I have been in a lot of different places. I've been at different big Agile consulting firms. I have yet to see a single person who's a quote life coach who has somehow just decided they're an Agile coach and come into the world. So I hear all this. Where are all these people? Where are these mass influx of people who call themselves life coaches who are now Agile coaches?
Yeah. So let me just answer that. When I say life coach, I don't mean like you're going in there and you're getting hired as a life coach. What I'm talking about is you get hired as an Agile coach, and you can get things that either border on or delve way into life coaching. For instance, here's an example. You have a one-on-one with somebody, which I use frequently. And they start going into areas that are beyond Agile, like way beyond Agile coaching. And that's, I believe, where the danger is. If they're going into regions and potentially bad things could happen. So yeah, you get hired as an Agile coach, but you don't know what's going to happen in that one-on-one session. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being hired as a life coach, but maybe one of your team thinks you're a life coach as well as an Agile coach. That's the part I'm talking about.
And Dan, if I could jump in, I actually had somebody I was talking to about 2 weeks ago who was a Scrum Master, who said to me that the organization he's working in have hired, I think he said 17 Agile coaches, none of whom have ever worked in Agile software development before. And one of them started his engagement with the C-level execs by sending them a questionnaire to fill in that took them several hours to complete, and ask questions like, what problems did they face in their personal life, and how did they think those problems affected their work? Wow. So it is happening. You may not have encountered it, but it is out there. The truth is out there.
That's not very Agile, sending them something for 2 hours. That's not Agile at all.
I mean, this guy actually said to me, God save me from Agile coaches, because every single one I've encountered has had no clue at all about Agile software development.
With pretty much anybody except for your first day or whatever, I try to start with a one-on-one meeting. So sending somebody a questionnaire, see, to me, like the one-on-one meeting, you get what you need to know out of that. You don't need to send a questionnaire. I don't need to send you 200 questions. I can figure out in about 20 minutes, like what's going on, basically.
Yeah, let's not get too hung up on the questionnaire, though, Dave. That was just an example of one Agile coach's behavior. Yeah.
So
and you haven't been in. Ryan, go.
Thanks. I think that's where I don't, except in these calls, I haven't actually heard the word life coaching used in Agile context much at all. What I've heard is perhaps professional coaching skills. And I think that's where the insertion of that element of Agile coaching was a very useful one, which started with people like Lisa Atkins and so on, really bringing the art of professional coaching into Agile coaching. Because at least up until then, and it still happens today, is that there's a certain, let's say, section of Agile coaches who have an agenda to bring in a particular framework, which may also be the agenda of the organization, but they might not know better that that's not the ideal approach to take at the outset. Now, I think it was it Dave who mentioned first you meet one-to-one. So that's where those professional coaching skills can come in, of listening and asking questions before coming in with an agenda and a solution. So there I think it's positive, but I agree that if there is, again, I don't really see life, and even in organizations, I don't really see the term life coaching coming up much, even outside Agile. I see maybe executive coaching, in which case, if that is what you're bringing, that's also okay, as long as that's part of the agreement, part of the contract, part of the what you're there to do. Then it can be an adjunct to Agile coaching, and it can be a useful adjunct to Agile coaching. But it comes back to what's my role here, what's my job here to do, and am I aware when I'm going from one role to another and wearing a different hat, and how appropriate that is in the moment.
Okay, Ryan. I mean, I don't actually want to get too hung up on the term life coaching and on life coaches. How many Agile coaches do you come across that have never actually done any Agile software development?
Many.
When you say done Agile software development, what do you mean by that? What does that look like to you?
What does that look like? Rapid feedback loops, being adaptable to change, welcoming change.
No, I mean, let me be more specific. Does that
high quality?
Does that mean? Let me be more. Does that mean you're the person on the keyboard coding, or does that mean that you've been part of a team? Like, for example, I have a product background. I have coded a very long time ago. You don't want me in front of a computer coding these days, but I've done product management. So have I? Not project. I've done product management. So have I worked on an Agile? Do I have an Agile background or not in your definition?
I would say it depends.
See, and I think that's baloney. I think that's baloney. I don't think you have to be a developer.
I would say it depends on what your product management experience is and whether you used rapid feedback loops, whether you used Agile techniques, whether you brought agility into product management. Then I would say, yes, you've got relevant experience. If you've been a product manager that's never used brought in any type of agility to your product management, then I would say, no, you haven't got any experience in Agile development.
I agree that obviously you look at the recs, it's not required that you're hands-on on anything, but I would say having done most of the work hands-on in the entire SDLC and other areas such as hardware systems, I can tell you that when I either Scrum Master or Agile coach my teams, I bring that into it. I bring that experience into it because in reality, while I have coached other teams other than software, we all know that it's mostly about software in industry. So I'll get a lot of questions when I train them or coach them where, they say, well, this is all interesting, but how does this apply to me? And that's where I bring in my software development experience with Agile. But I would say I give them more of my software experience than I do the Agile experience. But it helps to have both. But if you only have Agile, in my experience, I've seen that a lot. And I don't believe from having seen that it's as effective. A lot of times you'll get stuff like they don't know the answer to that type of question. And so then they have to go research it and get back to them. Whereas I could just give you an answer. I could talk for hours on that, basically. And so I believe that if it's better to have that background, because really, let's say as a Scrum Master, when I look at my product owner and my developers, I see them as my customer because I have to facilitate their work. So they're my customer. So if I've already done that work, I know exactly what they need. I'm not guessing. I know what they need. I know as a developer what I would want from my Scrum Master. I know as a product owner what I would want from my Scrum Master. And again, I don't see those roles different. It's just who the audience is.
I think coming back to Ian's point, I think there's and more over time, because of the popularity of Agile and the number of Agile coaches pumped into the market, or pumping themselves into the market, there are more and more people who haven't worked in the way that you're describing, Ian, or in, let's say, ways that are exemplary in some form for agility within a team, within an organization, and yet coming with, say, an agenda to bring in a certain framework or method or so on. And I think this is one of my big bugbears, is particularly at the moment, is that's I think one of the crises that we're facing is that discrepancy between who has seen some of that, at least, and who hasn't. But also, like in any art, expertise is through experience, and not only seeing good, but also seeing bad. And so building up implicit patterns of heuristics based on past experience, that we can then form some kind of a gestalt about what might be appropriate in the next context that we land ourselves in. And I think that is often missing. And there are some brilliant people out there who have seen multiple instances of good, bad, and everything in between, and can therefore bring, and we need that to learn, and can therefore bring value, more so than those who haven't but are calling themselves an Agile coach. And that might be from people who have actually worked in, say, software, but have worked in very traditional ways, but not seen any other ways of working.
I could say like two examples of just requisition names that I've seen are specifically technical Scrum Master and technical Agile Coach.
Can I respond to this question down here? So do you agree that the discipline? So I know Marty Kagan talks in, I think it's Empowered, not Empowered. I can't remember, Inspired, I think. He talks about how a product, to be a good product manager, you should have coding background. I think that my experience coding gives me a huge benefit as a product manager, because I understand what goes on there. And I've had, in times in my career in product, I've come into situations where I've been talking to developers and we've been talking through ideas about what to do. And a developer said to me, "Oh, well, that's impossible." And I said, "Well, I would do it like this." And I gave sort of pseudocode for what I would do. And they're like, "Oh, this guy actually understands like what he's doing. So he's not a complete moron. So maybe we'll listen to him more." So it's been helpful in that regard. Do I think that you necessarily must know how to code in order to be either a coach or a product manager? No, I don't. I think that's a gatekeeper. I think that's someone like Marty being like, "Well, I have that experience and it's been helpful to me, therefore everybody should have it." Well, no, I think there's a whole range of people that could be great product managers that have no coding. I mean, heck, look at Menlo Innovations. They have people that come out who've been, like artists or musicians, and they come in and decide they want to be developers, or they're high-tech anthropologists, and they teach them how to do it. They just look at, do they have good work ethic, and do they work well as a team, and they teach them how to do those things. So is it a prerequisite? No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I jump on this as well, because I just wanted to reinforce a bit what you were saying there. One of the best product owners I've ever worked with was a new product owner, but the big thing that she brought to the team was that she really, really, really understood the product domain, and that enabled the team to launch a new product to market, which generated £1 million a year after 4 weeks of development, because she could be ruthless about what did not need to be done. But would she become an Agile coach now based on the back of that? No, she wouldn't. She'd be an awesome product owner, but that's not.
She could also be. She could. I argue she could be a great Agile coach, because she could help people in that product role who are doing exactly that and help them do. One of the biggest things I see among teams is they're doing a whole bunch of crap that doesn't need to be done, and working with the product owner to be like, hey, do you really need to do that? That's a great thing to help other people with. And it's hugely, to your point, could be hugely beneficial to the company.
It could be, and she would probably be an awesome coach of product owners. But that, to me, would not actually make her an agile coach.
Yeah, I think this comes back to what is an agile coach. And if it was back to that question that's now not popped up anymore, but about do you need to code? And to your point, Ian, is if you're coaching the technical side of agility, like what enables agility through the technical, then sure. But there's different focuses, and I think that I like to motivate for a multidisciplinary approach, because there can be space for a few people that can add value in their different areas of expertise. We've mentioned product management, we've mentioned technical, but there could be change and so on.
But that's why I actually come from the position of there is no such thing as an agile coach, because there is agile software development. So you could have somebody coaching people on agile software development. There is agile product management. So you could have somebody coaching on agile product management. Yeah, one of the things I say to Scrum Masters all the time is, if you don't know how to do something, you shouldn't be coaching it. You should find somebody who knows how to do it to bring into your team to help coach.
One of the problems for Scrum Masters, I've seen this quite a lot, is, there is no assistant Scrum Master, right? So you just have to jump into that. So I think probably for most Scrum Masters, no matter how good you are, and even if you came from a developer background, your first day on the job as a Scrum Master with certifications and even with a developer background, that's got to be really frightening the first time that you do that, because like I said, there's no assistant Scrum Master. And I know for a lot of people, that's very frustrating. Now, if I was to, and again, I agree. I mean, you look at the recs, and I understand that there's no requirements for these things, but my opinion is you shouldn't be an agile coach before you're a Scrum Master, and you shouldn't be an enterprise agile coach before you're like a team's agile coach. That's the way I feel about it. I'm not the one that writes the recs, but I do believe that, for instance, I don't know. My assumption is if you're an accountant, right? And I know it's not a manager, it's a facilitator, but the person that's going to be managing those accountants probably was an accountant. They probably weren't some other degree or some other experience. And so, like any other field, I agree that, well, for any other field, you wouldn't see this type of stuff, right? Usually you have the experience over your reports. And again, I understand they're not reports and it's facilitating, but I do believe that there is a similarity there. And understand also that in reality, and I know many of us disagree with this, the reality is that the management, the leadership, they see us as managers, whether we like it or not. That's the way they see it. At least I've seen that many times. I don't think I've seen it any other way, actually.
I want to pop in for a second. We do have another participant who has contacted on LinkedIn and would like to join the jam session. That is Mr. Dave Sabine. Hello, Dave. And what would you like to contribute here as you step onto the stage?
Well, first to say hello. I've had a lot of interaction with some of you over the years. Ian, it's nice to talk with you, meet you. Dan, it's good to see you again. I've been listening in, and I'm just going to observe and kind of stay quiet for a bit. But as many of you know me, I have strong opinions. I'll share them later when I feel like I've gotten a little more of a handle on the conversation.
And you got great props for the musical, well done.
Yes,
You're
I have,
you're
I have
legit,
the guitar
Dave.
part,
There's,
and I've got some drums too.
there's two
I have
other-
my drums right over here. In fact, they're in the dark right now, but yeah, there's a
I've
great
got
drum set
a
nearby.
very large Roland JC 120 that can blast the entire block.
That's
so
awesome.
there's two other points that I would like to raise. One is, and this is seems to be a mantra that I get hit with a lot and have been hit with a lot over the years, where people who call themselves agile coaches have frequently turned around to me and said, coaches coach, trainers train.
I've done tons of training as an agile coach. I mean,
Right. But then they complain when coaches aren't allowed to train, and they say, well, agile coaching isn't just coaching, it's teaching, it's mentoring, it's guiding. It's like, come on.
it's whatever the organization
Whatever I wanted to be at this moment in time. And the other thing is, and Dave, this relates to something that you were saying, is I really don't like this differentiation between agile coach being a team coach or an enterprise coach and a scrum master just working with a team. Because scrum masters, real scrum masters, don't just work with teams, they work with the organization.
True.
If they're not doing that, then to me, they are not a real scrum master.
True.
Ken wanted to hop in here for a second, so I want to give Ken a shout on that page.
I may jerk the wheel in a different direction here, so I don't know. Forgive me, you. But I want to say, and I'm not casting any kind of blame on anybody here for sure, but I think the topics that we're talking about, in my opinion, are actually part of the problem with the industry at large, because we spent a lot of time talking about the semantics of things, and I feel like every organization I go into, at least, if I start picking at hairs and splitting hairs and talking about, well, the Scrum guy says this and this role is this and it's not that and all these things, people check out. And I think that's has been built up over a number of years, this kind of dogma about all these things. And I think this is actually part of what's wrong with the agile industry.
Amen. 100%.
I agree. And I think this is one of the reasons why when we're brought in as agile coaches, and I think I alluded to this, maybe I said it before, the hiring managers are not looking for you to bring in Scrum. They're trying to identify what we need. That is not the destination. That is the vehicle to which to get you to the destination, which they're looking for, things to run better, things to flow better, more delivery, less chaos. Agile, hopefully, is the way to get them there. But if you said to them, well, I'm going to teach them Agile for the sake of teaching them Agile, they're going to look at you and be like, really? That's why I hired you?
Yeah.
Although I will say, sorry, can you please?
Yeah, can I just say a little bit more, maybe? I think what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, everything an agile coach does is help an organization change, help the people inside of that organization change, help the interactions between those people change in ways that are beneficial and more effective. Personally, I'd rather focus on those behaviors and those interactions and speak to the boiled down kind of nuts and bolts of human beings and human systems, as opposed to speaking to them through the lens of a framework or through the lens of the Agile Manifesto or those other things, because that is what has gotten the industry tripped up, in my opinion.
So, Ken, what if I were to say that, like, just to challenge your point there a little, that an agile coach, in my opinion, is a person who is engaged in the work of uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. And I appreciate that work often causes us to interact with the larger system and get involved with organizational change. But at its core, my opinion is that agile coaching is uncovering better ways to develop software by doing it and helping others to do it. If we take that piece out and disassociate it with software, then it's some other kind of work. It's not agile coaching, it's business coaching or life coaching or something else, management consultancy, organizational change. I just want to challenge the point. Like, I don't know if you're saying that the phrase agile coach can be anything and everything, and there's no boundaries there, or do you like or not the boundary I'm drawing?
I think I'm saying that agile coaching probably shouldn't be a thing.
Sure, but it is.
At the end of the day, I think what any coach does is really just help people change, help the system change, help the processes within the organization change, help the strategies within that organization change. I think that's what I'm saying. I think in reality, we're all just change coaches and we just call ourselves other things.
I don't think it's that much different from, for instance, you're a large company and you're bringing in a configuration management tool. And as you're bringing that in, part of the deal is they're going to send trainers. Now, they're training you specifically in how to use that tool. I see that as agile for us. But the goal is not completely just, okay, here, learn the tool. It's to use that tool to better everybody. That tool probably has more features than what you used to have. It's probably got more capabilities. It allows you to do things faster. So I don't really see it yet. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, but I'm just saying, like, in general, we're teaching agile or coaching agile, but that's not the destination. That's the vehicle to get the company where we need it to be.
So what I'm seeing, so back to Ken's point about there shouldn't be such a thing as an agile coach. That's fine, and I'm fine with that too. The thing that I'm seeing at the moment is that there's sort of a void now in terms of who can assist with change, and sort of a reversion back to traditional project manager, delivery manager, particularly out in the market in terms of the kinds of roles that we see being advertised out there now, which I think is a shame, because why do we throw out the baby with the bathwater? If we can take out a more like what is the essence and what is good and what we've learned and what we've integrated and fantastic tools and methods and frameworks and techniques, but also ways of working with people that can, and systems and products and so on, that we can distill from that what is useful to take. We don't need the word agile anymore, but it's also not necessarily a bad thing just because there's a sort of a movement or backlash, let's say, against some of the bad things that we've been talking about so far. I see, Dan, you're saying this still feels very much like a debate about words.
I threw it into the chat, so I'll expose it for the live audience here. I thought in the lead up conversation to this, there was conversation about wanting to move forward and talk about, like, what's the future look like and where do we go from here? And this feels like we're still debating words and what agile means and what agile coach means. And it feels like there's been 4 episodes about that debate. And I'm just asking, I'm happy I will debate. I can talk about this all day long. I actually find it somewhat interesting for me, but I don't know how interesting it is to the average listener.
I'll answer back at you. Like, well, what would you say to the question, where do we go from here?
Yes. Okay. So where do we go from here? For me, I mean, right. I've launched a company under the brand Optiman, right? Optimize Human. So my goal, and maybe people think it's too life coachy. I don't know. Maybe I'm one of the bad people. But I think that as I stated up front, I think the problem is not people working. It is not the process. That isn't the problem. And it isn't the way that we do work, and it isn't the work problem. People don't have any issues. Like, they can figure that stuff out. And I've seen this. There's very smart people. They're working somewhat together in that they're in the same company and perhaps on the same quote unquote team that feels and operates nothing like a team. But they are in proximity to each other working, and they're working ostensibly towards some goal. But they don't work particularly well. And I think if you can fix those issues and you can help people both individually get past that, like a lot of people, and I've been one of them, have issues dealing with other people and interacting with other people. They can be very smart. I see it very much in the tech industry where people can't, they just don't have that social skill. And there's studies that are showing that people are hanging out less outside of work. There's a lot more remote interaction on gaming things and stuff like that. So we aren't developing these human skills. I think we need to rebuild those muscles of being human in the workplace and understanding what true psychological safety is, not psychological safety in the safe space of I can't ever be offended, but understanding what that means to be able to say things and have other people say things that might actually offend you. And how do you respond when that happens in a way that's productive? And so if we can help people work together as humans and build great teams, those great teams they'll figure out the work process stuff. It's not hard. I don't think colleges even teach waterfall anymore. I mean, for goodness sakes, I don't think the new workforce has any idea. When we say waterfall, they're like, what is that? I've only understood this Scrum thing. So I think we're in a different place. I think the future is helping people work together and making great people that make great products, that make great things that people care about. And even in an age of AI is going to suck if we don't take into account humans. If the humans building it are not good humans that understand how to build things that help humans, we will not get good AI. So I believe it's a skill that's needed, and I think that's the focus. So there you go. That's my future.
Thank you. If I could just say one thing, like I couldn't possibly disagree with anything that you've said, and I'd be surprised if anyone did. I just don't think it's enough. Because particularly if we are going to put the word agile to it, or anything software, or anything around ways of working that go beyond what team coaching is, because I think what you've described is mostly team coaching, but not necessarily, I think, what most of us are doing, which goes beyond the team dynamics, the human side of it, but also into the actual nature of the work that we do, which then goes into the product management, the processes, the technical practices, and so on, which then also requires change and requires a more systemic view of across the organization, alignment, synchronization, coordination, and so on. So that's why I think that we are a very integrative field, and we need to be by definition, but nobody can be an expert in all of those areas that I've mentioned. But it's fine
Absolutely.
to focus in one or two of them, like you're saying you do, which is great.
Oh,
I think more of that. We need more focuses because nobody can be an expert in all of it.
But let me just state, because I think you've misstated. I think I will put it on me. I didn't clearly articulate what I do. It is not a team thing. It is. We are talking about human systems, and human systems occur at multiple levels, as everybody on this call I'm sure knows, throughout the organization. And even when you're talking about product, if there's a human-centered design way to approach product management. So I'm talking about human first approaches to every aspect of the organization, from a human systems and a human system design perspective, up and down the hierarchy. I've worked with executive vice presidents of companies, with this sort of a framework, and they appreciate that lens, I'll say.
So I want to jump in here because I don't disagree with what you're saying, Dan. I agree, and I agree with what you said, Ryan, about I don't think that's enough. And I don't think it's enough because we have actually a more fundamental problem here, which is actually the problem that those 17 middle-aged white men that went to Snowbird tried to do something about. and have to say they failed quite spectacularly. Any of you familiar with a guy called Herb Bennington?
Could you repeat the name?
Herb Bennington.
Mm.
So Herb Bennington was involved in the 1950s in a program called SAGE, which was developing an air traffic control system for the US federal government. He left the industry because he became very disillusioned with it. He was enticed back in 1956. He did a talk to the US Navy. And in it, he highlighted some of the problems that he'd observed on the SAGE program. One of the quotes from his white paper: "Many procurement documents act as if one produces software in the same way one manufactures boots." Still a problem today.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Another problem he cited. This one cracks me up. An executive vice president of one of the largest IT firms at the time said to him, "Herb, you've got to realize the programmers are different. They've got to get special treatment." No, they don't. They're normal people. Yeah, they need to be treated the same as normal people. The third reason he cited was that we keep seeing missed schedules. Producing a large computer system is like raising a family. You can observe your neighbors and see all of the successes and failures in their children. You can reflect on the experiences you had as one member of a large family. You can observe all the proper maxims of life and society. You can even study at length the experience of many others who have raised families. However, you have to start out and do it on your own. That's the only way you truly learn how to do it. Now, my favorite Bennington quote, and this one I think actually applies to agile coaches as well as it does to developers, but his quote was actually about developers. "There remains a tremendous range and ability about computer programmers to do different jobs. Some are good gem cutters for any kind of stone. Some can play very special roles, for example, where fastidious approaches are needed. Some are brilliant and articulate conceptualizers and leaders. Some should not be allowed anywhere near a computer. We must learn to recognize these types and use them in their right place, and to set higher standards for not using people, even though the market is insatiable. We still have a fundamental professionalism problem in the software industry." That's not been addressed.
So, I mean, I've just listened to all those quotes and all that stuff. And frankly, all the stuff about the 17 white men, I find that just dismissive and just it's a way of throwing shade at these people. Like, what can we get hang on. Can we get beyond the complaining about people and how much they failed and talk about what we're going to do in the future? Like, so you've cited a problem. So what do you propose we do about it? Like, what is the future?
Well, for one thing, I think we should actually have minimum standards for entry, professional standards for entry into this industry.
And
This
who sets
industry,
those?
what is this industry? That software development?
Software development.
Yeah.
Who sets them? I don't know. Not me.
I'm speaking in a week and a half, 2 weeks at a conference about software quality, liability, and attestation. This is interesting because people on that panel are arguing a similar, in a similar vein, that they want a floor that is defined, well defined, above which organizations have to produce quality software. And they're trying to figure out how to define that floor. What does it look like? Ian, they're not currently talking about minimum standards for entry from in terms of skill and developer, but they're talking about minimum standards for software quality. There's an overlap there, I think.
There's an overlap, but I don't. You know, at the end of the day, how are you going to get minimum standards of software quality if you don't have minimum skill levels for building software in the first place? Same as you could argue that we should actually have minimum skill levels defined for agile coaching, if agile coaching is going to be a thing.
So yeah, given that that you talked about the skin color of the people who wrote the manifesto, I'm going to assume that diversity and cultural diversity is important to you. Maybe a big assumption, but if that what you're talking about sounds like gatekeeping to me. And it sounds like, at least in the United States, the communities that are going to be hardest hit in order to meet those minimum standards are exactly the communities that are of the different diversity, that are of people who don't look like me, who would want to get into well, you don't have the requisite skills. So sorry, you didn't have the ability to come up. So you're sorry, kept. You're no longer capable of being a software developer in the software industry because you don't meet our floor.
Hold on, Dan.
So Dan, let me just say that
what evidence exists that statement is even remotely true? I mean, most of the software developers I interact with on a daily basis don't look like me. They're from all over the world, different cultures and colors and ages, and like, I don't want to get into the issue, but I just think your assertion is fundamentally wrong. It's true.
I don't. So I think, but that's because there are no standards. So you allow people to say, hey, I want to be a software developer. I want to be in the software development industry. They go get a job as a software developer, as a low-level software developer, and they get the skills and they come up to speed. They come up the line and they come up if you say, no, here's the minimum, here's the floor, who's going to have, so I am lucky enough to have had, like, my parents were not wealthy, but we came up and my parents were able to support us in a way that, like, I had the time to not have to go immediately into the workforce and to get an education. Well, if I didn't have that time because I needed to immediately provide for myself, and then I couldn't meet those floors. I would have to get so where do I go? If there's a floor and I don't have the minimum standards, how do I get in?
So Dan, two things. One, the line I used about the 17 middle-aged white men was actually a quote from one of the authors of the manifesto. It wasn't a line I was throwing out there as a line I came up with. It was actually a response from one of the authors when they were asked in 2011 if they were going to update the manifesto. And the response was, why would you want 17 middle-aged white men to do this? There is more diversity in the world. Other people should be doing this now, not us. So that hopefully gives a bit of context around that. Secondly,
you do know that there was an effort to try and do that.
Yeah,
there is still an effort to try and do that, and
nobody's
Cliff has done that. And
this is interesting to me. Sorry, Ryan, but Ian, like, there are manifestos being produced all the time. People write them, publish them. And any day now, there could be a document that attracts attention, and it will have been written by whoever has written it. You know, like the fact that this one document from 2001 continues to get attention, I think, is testament to the quality of the text in that document. But yeah, I got into a debate recently with somebody who was kind of arguing that well, there needs to be a new manifesto. Well, go for it and write one. Yeah, and if the ideas in it are sufficiently attractive and strong, then it'll get the attention it needs or deserves. You know.
Now, the other point I'd like to come back to you on, Dan, is I did not have that luxury that you had. At the age of 16, I had to leave school and start looking after myself. What did I do to get into software development? I took a job outside of software development. And I spent time on my own learning software development. And I was fortunate to get helped by some very, very clever, very, very helpful people who helped me get to a level of proficiency where I could actually get myself a job as a software developer.
So that is a way, 100%. Menlo Innovations has another way. And they have a way where they take someone who's been a musician and they pair them with someone who's a quality developer, and they pair, and by pairing and working together, that person who used to be an artist or a musician or a PhD in history learns how to be a developer with no floor and no gatekeeping of you can't be. They're a developer. They're just a developer who doesn't currently know how to develop.
I mean, that's a bit of an oxymoron to me, a developer who doesn't know how to develop, because I don't see how that person can be somebody who doesn't know how to develop.
I'm with Dan on this point.
Developer. They could be learning to be a developer, but if they can't develop, they can't be a developer. And I'm sure Menlo Innovations have some standards, levels of attainment that they expect those people to achieve.
So I'm with Dan on this point, Ian. I think it's a rough territory to get into a conversation about minimum standards for entry into the industry. I'm with Dan. I think people should enter. They should seek teachers and mentors, and they should be as early as possible involved with non-trivial production of software. Not alone, hopefully, but surrounded by good people who could share great practices with them.
And in the UK, there is so looking at other professions, because I do also feel sometimes we get too encased in our own little bubble. So if I look at the legal profession, which is a profession I've had a lot of interaction with over the last few years, there are two routes into becoming a qualified lawyer in the UK. There is an academic route and there's a vocational route. But you have to demonstrate a minimum standard before you can call yourself a solicitor, whichever route you go through.
Also, anybody can represent themselves in a court of law, though.
To conduct yourselves in a court of law, you typically in the UK have to be a barrister, apart from the very lowest courts. And that's a different set of qualifications, where again, you can be a pupil barrister. As a pupil, you are not entitled to speak in court. You have to actually be qualified.
So Niels is posting a few comments here. I think I'd love to respond to those. Niels, I didn't say a new Agile manifesto should be written. I was just talking about a manifesto. And if it's sufficiently interesting, it'll get the attention it deserves, and it'll take people in a whole new direction. But then to the next comment, this whole issue of ethics, I don't know. I think generally people are lacking humility. Like, I don't want to claim to be anyone's moral compass or ethical guide. And I think a lot of people calling themselves Agile coaches, or other, even life coaches, have taken on this very sufficient hubris. They think that they can be an ethical guide and moral compass, and that's very dangerous territory. Dan, you talked about good people to make good AI and that was an example you gave. I don't know how to define good people. I don't think that I'm capable of designing human systems that are good. I think we need better principles. We need maybe like some first principles. I want an AI that optimizes for truth, for example, not goodness, but truth, empirical truth. So I'm gonna lay my hat on empiricism rather than morality, and hope that AI goes in that direction. For example,
just to Niels's point about Agile ethics. So the Agile Alliance actually recently has a group of people got together under the Agile Alliance and created a code of ethics. I mean, you can go and read it.
I think it's laughable, truly.
Yeah, I was going to say. So I mean, most professions do, and obviously the coaching profession does. The Agile ones, they sort of borrow heavily from that. And then there's kind of like this whole flavor of you should be agile and this is the right way to be
Right.
agile. So in that sense, I agree with you, David.
Well, and what if you're not? There's no legitimacy. There's no consequence to if you're not.
No.
I mean, that's. I think this gets back to Ian's first point. There is no such thing as agile, really, because it's done. It's passé.
The other thing is, we're not a profession, because a profession would have minimum standards to allow people in. Look at medicine, look at law, look at any profession. They have minimum
Yeah, look at
standards.
medicine. In the U.S., we've got the guy named Dr. Death who graduated law school and got his certification, all this stuff, and started crippling people when he started doing back surgeries and neck surgeries on them. Fully qualified, went through all the things, met all the minimum standards, and he was out there debilitating people. He had the plaque on the wall. He had the certification. I think that's a bunch of ethical, slimy people. Not all of them, but I meet so many lawyers that have zero ethics. And the reason they don't is because they know the law and they know where they can skirt it. And they know no one's ever going to hold them accountable, because you can't sue them because they get free law. They can go represent themselves and file all sorts of stuff. I think that's a bunch of hooey.
I think as far as
Go on, Dave.
I'm not exactly sure, from all that was talked about, like what standards we're focusing on, but just in general, I would say that, you look at a rec and the rec gives you all the bullet points that they're looking for. Now you find when you speak to them,
Recs are bullshit.
Yeah, no,
The recs are all bullshit.
I
Oh,
agree,
we swear. Oh, good. That makes it a lot better for me. They are bullshit.
I would say that 50% of it is true, and then the other 50% you'll learn. Well, not the other 50%, but another 10 or 20% you'll learn on the interview, and the rest you'll learn when you get there. But I mean, at least it tells you the qualifications, right? So that's the minimum standards that they're looking for. Now, things that I've seen, for instance, certain frameworks, they say, well, you must have this. And then you get there and you find out that they're doing hybrid, even though they're saying, oh, we do this purely. And then you go there and you find out it wasn't true. It was they're actually doing hybrid. I see that, but any rate, so that's what I would say about that. If you look at, for instance, accountants, I'll go back to accountants. You have just a general accountant and you have somebody that has a CPA. Okay. Some recs require that you have a CPA. Some just require that you're an accountant. So,
Well,
but you find out when you read that rec, what are the minimum requirements?
well, have you talked to the CPA to do you know how difficult and rigorous that particular exam is?
I do. I have people in my family who I have one that passed it the first time around. He's a genius. And I have somebody else that's in my extended family who it took him 10 years to pass it. But that didn't mean that he didn't work for 10 years. He just worked as a general accountant. You don't have to be a CPA to get a job. Just like if we don't have one of the certifications, there's a big one, a massive one in our industry. And I've noticed it doesn't seem to be as popular as it was like a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago. And, but what I'm saying is
you can say the word SPC can be said here.
I'll let you say it.
Like a CPA is being tested in a very technical domain in a subject area that is easily testable. You could ask people to explain finance and math and have them calculate a cumulative interest over a mortgage, 25-year mortgage, and they can do it and the answers are right or wrong. In the area of coaching, all that's off the table.
Well, what I'm saying,
I don't know how we would qualify,
like the CPA. Like my understanding, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an accountant, but my understanding from speaking to people is that it's a very theoretical exam. That's my understanding. So when you go out in the real world, right, you're going to be running TurboTax or something of that magnitude. You're not going to need to know all of that stuff, but it's an extra gate that gets you in the door, just like having a master's in business administration might be the extra thing that gets you in the door. However, if I didn't even have a college degree,
accounting is more accounting is less subjective. And so testing someone in that field is less.
Okay. I would argue that if you had two accountants in a room and you asked them the same question, believe me, you're going to get two different answers. And I agree. I would think that way. But if you've actually dealt with them, you'll get two different answers to the same question. Not in every case, obviously, but in many cases. So it's not as exact as you would think it is. And I think there's a lot of fluidity, in a lot of areas, basically. I mean, I could find examples where look, let's talk about examples that we all know, right? Michael Dell, Bill Gates,
Mark Cuban,
Zuckerberg. None of these people, I don't believe Zuckerberg either. None of these people, I believe, actually finished college. Am I correct about that? I think, and look at what they built. Look at what they built. Minimum over billions and billions of dollars worth of market cap. And I don't believe any of those people, to my knowledge, actually has an undergraduate. So I don't believe that just because you're throwing I can tell you this. I know people that have lots of certifications, and I know somebody with, like we were talking about, very high certifications who I have sat in meetings with, and I cannot believe that they could pass those certification exams. And especially the ones like we're talking about, those are difficult exams. But I know people that pass them, and when you ask them a basic Scrum question or a basic Agile question, they have no idea. So there are just some people, and we all know them, that are very good at taking tests. That doesn't mean that they're going to do a good job. That just means that they know how to take tests well.
No,
and also, so they take a test while they pass. So let's go back to lawyers. So I have friends who are lawyers. I stand by, and I don't think they're scummy, but I find a lot of lawyers are. But the best lawyers, to me, are the lawyers. It has nothing to do with the law. They provide good counsel, and they say, you need to make a business decision here. This is what we can and can't defend. And here's what it's going to cost. Like, this path you're going on is going to take you to court. It's going to cost you $250,000 just to get to court. And this is over a $25,000 thing. Do you really want to spend $250,000 over that? Maybe you should think about letting it go. They provide good counsel. It has nothing to do with whether or not they know the law, or they're going to go win in court. It has to do with the advice and the counsel they give you before you get to court.
So I'm kind of losing track of the conversation. If there's a center, so like there's no gravity right now in the conversation.
Let me try to bring this back to what I thought we were doing here. So the last thing, I think, before we went off on a tangent was, I think, how are we going to fix this, I believe. So my opinion on that is to do what I believe that we should have always been doing, but we lost track of, to not get into semantics. And I think we've argued a lot about that. And the last couple of ones, I think we've argued a lot about that. But I believe that in order for us to bring this back on track, if we ever want to, whether people like it or not, we need to sit down with the hiring managers and say, what is it that you want me to do? What is your goal? What do you want me to do with this? Do you want me to, with this transformation or whatever you're bringing me in there to do, and focus on that and use Agile to get them to be where the manager wants them to be. And if you can do that, then they will be happy, and they will bring all of us back to as a community. I mean, because if you're not fulfilling that basic ask, and you're just your thing is, I'm going to just go in there and either coach or whatever you want to call it, facilitate, teach, mentor Agile, without the prize being getting them to what the hiring manager is looking for, then I believe we're all just wasting our time. It's not about Agile. It's about getting the organization to where it needs to be. Whatever that is, delivering faster, more quality assurance, getting getting the releases out the door, like, you put your phone on and every day it says there's a new update. Do you want the update? Whatever it is that they're focused on, we have this big competitor, and here's what they're doing. How can you help us? If you just go in there and say, I'm going to teach you guys Agile, you're probably not going to win that job, right? Agile, it's not the destination; it's the vehicle that gets you to the destination.
So I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here, Dave, because I actually had a client approach me a while ago, and they said, we want you to provide somebody to us for 6 months to write automated unit tests around our code base. And I said, no, you don't. You want somebody to come in and teach your developers how to write automated unit tests. Because if I provide somebody to you to just write the automated unit tests, and your developers don't know how to write them and don't know how they work, then as they start changing things and those unit tests break, they'll just rip the unit tests out and you will end up with no unit tests. They were absolutely adamant that they wanted somebody to come in and just write unit tests for them.
No, I agree. And I agree with you in that a lot of times when the client's bringing you in, they really don't know what they need. They think they know what they need, but they don't really know what they need. That being said, if they come back to you and say, no, you're wrong, this is what we need, then give it to them.
So I'm gonna go back to David's point here for a second.
Look, you'll make more money that way.
Well, hang on a second. All right. So here we are. How many episodes have we done here? This is number 4, right? That we've done kind of on this topic, and I don't know what problem we're trying to solve here. That's I think that's an interesting thing. So David, please, what problem do you think we're trying to solve? And maybe we'll go around the table with that and end that for next week.
The problem that I think is worth solving is if we take everything Dave just talked about and put that now into and just understand that there are people such as hiring managers who have an inkling of what they need. Ian, maybe they don't quite know. I agree. But they're out there looking for someone called an Agile coach. That's the problem. Because why is Dave having that conversation with a hiring manager in the first place? It's because that hiring manager has been told, go find an Agile coach. Why have they been told that? What have they been told? I think semantics are important here. And it's perhaps one of the solutions for the future, Dan, is to help people understand, like help people know what is in that container, what is in that word and what is not in that word. So that if what they're looking for is organizational change, there's lots of great people out there that focus on organizational change strategy and organizational change management and so on. But no, they've been looking for the past 8 years for someone called an Agile coach to help them with organizational change. Like maybe there's a disconnect there. That's the problem.
And I think you can find out a lot of this by being very respectful when you're being interviewed. Basically, right? You're going in there for the first time and it says Agile Coach on the rec, and then you start talking to them. And then, very respectfully say, well, start asking them powerful questions and see where they go with it. And whatever it is that they want, if you can provide that, why would you turn the job down? I mean, if you can provide it, do the job. That's the way I look at it. I'll do the job for you if I can do it. If I can't do it, for some reason, like, it's in an area that I don't know. Like if they come up to me and they say, I don't know, something very technical, like they say, well, can you come in and actually like build a DevOps system for us, like hands-on? I tell them, I said, I'm not a DevOps engineer. I'm an Agile coach.
Yeah.
I can
No, no.
work
So
with that department, and I can make them better at what they do. But no, if you're asking me to come in there and build physically, like hands-on a DevOps, I can't do that. But here's what I can do for you, and that's what I do when I go into an interview. And then I tell them
I appreciate that people have taken those jobs, and I agree. But that is how the phrase Agile Coach has encroached on every other aspect of management, let's say, and now it doesn't mean anything, which is fine. And I'm with people who would argue that the whole term could be blown off the face of the planet and we'd be better off. I agree with that, but it's with us, and people don't understand what it is, and it creates all this confusion.
Okay, so I would like us to land. I like this question. I think I like this in terms of where we would go with the next place in the conversation. So, Dave, I'll go to you, then Dan, Ryan, and Ian, in terms of what's the problem that needs to be solved based on what you've heard. Dave, you first.
So, I mean, I just basically said it. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Basically,
Yes, please.
Go in there, go on the interview, talk to the hiring manager, give them a lot of powerful questions, find out exactly what they want you to do when you get there, because you can't rely on the rec. You just can't. It's always different, and sometimes it's vastly different. And I believe if you give the customer what they're looking for, and I'm not talking about coming in there and doing Agile necessarily, I'm talking about if what they're looking for is, hey, we want to run faster, we want to run with greater quality assurance, then, come in there and do what you need to do to get them there. And I think if you do that, we're all going to make all of us look a lot better than, I guess, whatever the current status is.
So I'm okay. I'm hearing better recs is what I'm hearing out of that.
That's definitely. I do agree with that. We need better recs. A lot of that stuff I've spoken to recruiters is copy and paste, maybe from 10 years ago.
Okay, very good. Now, Dan, what do you think the problem really is? And go with that, please.
Sure. I think the problem is that in some circles, Agile has become almost a dirty word. And I think there's a mismatch between what people think they want when they want an Agile coach and what they get. And what I mean by that is that there are some people who say, I want an Agile coach, and what they really want is someone to go implement a framework, and they get someone who's there and trying to help solve problems. And there are other people who say, I want to solve a problem, and they get somebody who is going to come in and implement a framework. So I think there's a problem. There's a mismatch between what people want. They don't understand how to get what they want to get help to move forward. And because of that, this Agile word has become kind of dirty. And what we need to do is find a way to get the people who need help, the right help that they need to accomplish what they want, with no judgment from us about, well, if someone says, I want to implement SAFe, not say, well, you assholes, why do you want to implement SAFe? You dummies, like, you guys should go, long walk off a short pier. Like, go give them what they want. And how do we help them get what they want?
All right. How do we help them get what they want? I like that. Ian.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what problem we're trying to solve, and I'm not sure that we could even solve that problem, whatever it is.
That's a fair answer. You can step off the stage if you wish, or you can posit one problem that you think might need to be addressed out of this discussion and the previous ones.
So going back to that client who wanted the unit test written, and I walked away from that. I'm quite happy I walked away from that. Because for me, giving the customer what they want giving them what they want is not always the right thing to do. It's actually often not the right thing to do. Giving them what we think they need is also often not the right thing to do. Actually helping them to understand the problem from a multifaceted approach. You know, I get approached by clients, and I quite often get approached and I say, we want to use Scrum. My first question to them is, why? Are you crazy? Why would you want to use Scrum? What problem are you trying to solve that you think Scrum is the answer to? Then they'll tell me from a management perspective what problem they think they have. And then I'll ask them a follow-up question, which is, if I went and asked the people doing the work what problem they thought should be solved, do you think they'd give the same answer? Maybe just talk to each other and figure out what problem you want solving, and then come back to me and see if I can, and I'll see if I can help you. But I can't solve your problems for you. Only you can solve your problems.
Be careful. That sounds a lot like professional coaching, and it sounds a lot like you don't need any coding experience to do what you just talked about.
At that level, you don't need coding experience, but I wouldn't say that's professional coaching. I'm not a professional coach. I don't have any professional coaching qualifications.
All right, so we're going very well into the next episode. I think this. Thanks, Ian. Ryan, play the last solo, and I'll take the head out.
Yeah. So yeah, the word that's screaming out to me is complexity. So there are many problems to be solved. There are many people who can solve different problems, sometimes overlapping problems, and so there's no one problem to be solved. If we're talking about Agile Coach or Agile coaching, there are so many different flavors, and I'm fine with that. And I'm also fine if that term, as it probably will, as most do, falls away gradually or off a cliff. But as long as we have it here, I agree with what most have said, which is understand what it is that you're here to do, what problems you're here to solve, and that's going to be completely different in every context and in every person who calls themselves an Agile coach.
Wonderful. Well said, Ryan.
Can I just jump in on one thing there, because there's another point that I think is actually important.
Wait, well, I would hang on. We have two folks who need to leave at the bottom of the hour. So just pop that for a second. See you, David. Dan, I think you need to check out as well.
I do.
And
see ya.
Thank you very much. Ian,
thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. Hope to see you again. And he drops out before I thank him. All right, Ian.
So
give us a coda.
Even if you understand what the problem is, and even if you think you can solve it, you should not solve it if you think that in doing so would do harm.
Do no harm. Sounds familiar, don't you think? Do no harm. Like the Hippocratic oath of software development.
I think you have the Hippocratic oath.
Helpers. You know, this is
that
funny.
Was funny.
Come all the way back here. I think Marcelo started this off a few weeks ago with helping people uncover better ways, right? We're helping people uncover better ways of developing software by doing it and helping them do it, right? Maybe that is the Hippocratic oath, the stone document that is there. Oof. I'm going to take a breath, and guys, hang around for a moment after I stop the stream. I'll put on some music. We can hang out for a moment, and I'll say goodbye to the folks out there who might still be watching and listening. Thank you so much for the precious gift of your time and attention. We'll see you next week. Wednesday is going to be the stream at that point, and we'll see. Maybe we'll solve the problems of the world. We'll find out why people want to hire these people called the Agile coaches. And maybe they're hiring consultants. I don't know. All right. All these questions and more may or may not be answered next week. Thank you so much.